All right, welcome everybody to the Farmer Friday Great Plains Regeneration webinar. And today I'm super excited to have some of my most favorite people on the call today, primarily because they love soil health and they love beer, which is our topic today. So excited to have you. We've got Darrin Unruh, Deters, and Will Heinen. So welcome everybody. The best part about this webinar is I'm going to give a little bit of a presentation, and this is interactive. So everybody has an assignment right now. Take out your cell phone right here. I know we all have them. Open up your camera, and I would like for everybody's camera to focus in on our QR codes as we go through the presentation. So like I mentioned, we have Deters. He is the Executive Director of Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams. We have Darrin Unruh, who is a board advisor to Great Plains Regeneration. He is also a farmer rancher in Pretty Prairie, Kansas. And we have Will Heinen. He is our Willcott Brewer with Willcott Brewing Company out of Holton, Kansas. All right, so here's the QR code I mentioned. Everybody scan that, because once you scan this QR code, it'll take you over to our website. And I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of information talking about GPR, because I'm going to just ask that you check on our website and go from there. But a little bit about Great Plains Regeneration is we are focused on facilitating and supporting the regenerative journey for producers. And we talk about this at every meeting. We have 5 principles of regenerative agriculture. Within these 5 principles, there are many different practices that a producer will take to be able to achieve these principles. But the goal is to really be focusing on minimizing our soil disturbance, maximizing our species diversity, keeping the soil covered, maintaining a living root, and integrating livestock. The last part that I want to mention about these principles is that we need to be able to apply our principles within context. So a great example of this is the way that a person practices regenerative farming, even in Northeast Kansas versus Southwest Kansas, can be greatly different. So I consider this place-based agriculture. Great Plains Regeneration has a focus of farmer-led education, watershed restoration with our partners, Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams, and then regenerative market development. And the regenerative market development is how we got to this idea of beer. And I will come right back to that. So here's who is on our board, our advisory panel. Lots of familiar faces here. We've got a couple of folks from Kansas. We help support the Fuller Field School down in Severy, Kansas. If you don't already have your ticket for that, I'm not positive if there's more seats available, but that event is September 8th and 9th in Severy, Kansas. And the website, I'll go ahead and stick in the chat. It's just fullerfieldschool.com. Check it out. And then the big reason why we're here today is the Kiss the Ground for Soil Regeneration fundraising event that we are doing on August 21st. As a way for Great Plains Regeneration and Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams to announce our partnership, we had this idea of, let's throw a party. Let's invite all of our friends. Let's get some amazing speakers, some amazing local food. And Aaron said, hey, let's make some beer. So, I mean, if I could just yada, now here we are. But there was a lot of steps that we had to go through between having an idea of making a beer and actually making a beer. So we're going to be completely transparent, and we're going to share with you the ways that this has worked and the obstacles that we've run up against. So I am going to stop the blabbing a little bit, and I'm going to bring in my good buddy and GPR supporter, Darrin Unruh. Darrin, how are you today?
Doing great, as usual.
Fantastic. So Darrin is our Kansas wheat producer that has helped supply some partial ingredients for the beer that we have for the August 21st event. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen here really quickly, and then we can go back to it. So let's have a conversation. Darrin, tell us a little bit more about this process.
About growing the wheat?
About the whole process of getting the wheat, having this idea. Why did you just happen to have wheat, heirloom wheat, that was ready to go into a beer product?
Well, so it really just started off as kind of a just little fun experiment. So my ancestors were part of the migration to the New World back in the late 1800s, and happened to bring over this wheat from the Ukraine, where they came from, that was a variety called Turkey Red. And I had a friend that had some left over, and I asked him if I could get some from him, and I planted a whole 3 acres because that was all the seed I had, and I scattered it out thin because I only had like 150 pounds of seed. And my brother was giving me a bad time, saying, "Yeah, we're just going to end up grazing it out." And I told him, I said, "No, I'm going to take it to harvest." And sure enough, we did make it to harvest. And I just did it for fun because of the history of it and stuff. I thought it would be just kind of interesting. So, excuse me. Anyway, that's kind of where the wheat came from, and how I got started in it. I planted it. I no-tilled it into an old alfalfa field, and put a lot of different companion crops in it, just kind of as an experiment. And of course, we were going to graze it, so I wanted, maximize the forage and the diversity out there that I could. And we ended up with harvesting it. It won't yield near what the modern varieties will, but that's okay. I didn't do it for the yield. We just wanted to do it, for the fun of it, really, is how it got started. And it's kind of blossomed from there. So
yeah, so that's a great foundation to, I love that story about your ancestors having that wheat. And I know that you personally, you have a connection to the ground, just like producers, a lot of producers do. You're intimately involved with the crops that you produce, the soil, and the overall system that you employ into your farming program.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, whatever the last year and a half has taught us, it's really hit home to me about the food that we're producing. With the whole pandemic thing and everything, it really, it really makes you stop and think about our connection to the food. And that all starts with the soil, right? And so healthy soil, I mean, there's so many things that come from there. And I mean, that's where it starts, increasing the water cycle, sequestering carbon, growing healthy food for people, real food, instead of just some overly processed stuff. I just, it all starts there. It became very evident, and even more so during the pandemic. Hey, Jess, you're still on mute.
I knew that.
Yeah,
okay. You would think that, I told you guys earlier, I've been sitting here since 8:30. You would think that I would know how to operate my Zoom by now. But, I think that's key, because you talk about the systems approach to farming and agriculture. And that's a great segue into Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams, and about our relationship that Great Plains Regeneration has forged with KAWS. And we've got Aaron Deters here. So I'd like to cue up Aaron. Let me pull up a little slide on Aaron here, just so that everybody gets an introduction to him. So Aaron Deters is the Executive Director for Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams. And through a fiscal relationship with GPR, they come alongside us and help us out with a lot of our programming, and are also our partners in this fundraiser. So here's a little bit about his bio. I'm not going to read it word for word, and I am going to stick this presentation in the chat, so everybody is welcome to download it and distribute as they see necessary. So welcome to the call, Aaron. How are you today?
Thank you, Jessica. Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about why you think this is important to support GPR, how we got here, and the fun conversation that we had really early on about some big ideas.
Well, if I had the bumper sticker off, I just texted Libby for the picture of it, but we have this bumper sticker that Libby made up for KAWS, and it says, "Great beer needs clean water." And I think that's That's a clever little saying, draw some attention to KAWS and for a good cause. But if you look at the mission with KAWS, it's pretty broad mission, right? So we're trying to connect the waters, lands, and people of Kansas. And that can mean a lot of things. But if we break it down and look at our vision, the first one is water. So we're really after clean, healthy, and plentiful waters. The other vision with lands is we want lands that are prosperous for people and wildlife. And then the people of Kansas, we really want them knowledgeable and connected to sustaining natural resources. And I think that ties in so well with Great Plains Regeneration. And that partnership and fiscal sponsorship, I think works. It's like a glove.
Yeah, it was like week one of getting all of this kickstarted, and we had decided to have this fundraiser. And you said, "Hey, let's brew some beer. I know a guy."
Yeah. So I know a guy, Sean, and Sean was actually the first guy that I met when I moved to Holton. I moved ahead of my family and was here, in a house that was empty, no TV. I was sitting at the bar watching a K-State football game. And right next to me was this guy, and he's like, "Hey, I'm Sean. I'm working on a brewery," for a couple of years at that point. And this was 5 years ago. And we got to be friends and actually spent quite a bit of time down there helping Sean move tanks around. I didn't know all the lingo and the jargon that he was referring to. Will probably does. But when this discussion of a fundraiser came up and wanting to model it like some of the other chapter events with some of our nonprofit organizations like Ducks Unlimited, beer is an integral part of that. And why not? It fits well. It's an ag product, at its basics. So I thought it was a great fit.
Absolutely. I think some of my best ideas have been in similar scenarios, where you're sitting down, you're casual, and you're having these conversations. And so when you brought up this idea of beer, my first thought was how that aligns with Great Plains Regeneration's new market development. I already knew that Darrin Unruh had this focus with regenerative heirloom grains. And so what we did next is we reached out to Willcott Brewing. So next I'd like to introduce to everybody Will Heinen, and I will put his information up here on the screen. So this is Will. He is the Willcott brewer. We've actually been on site. We've got to work alongside Will, and they're actually bottling right now. And Will, you can correct me, but this is a process that can't be stopped. So if Will has to hop off the call, no big deal, because we understand what it takes. But here's the QR code. If everybody wants to use their phone to scan the QR code, it'll take you to the Willcott website and you can learn a little bit more about them. So Will, welcome to the call.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here.
Awesome.
So what are you curious about?
Yeah. So, Will, I mean, you're a little familiar with the soil health aspect. At the brewery there, Sean, the owner, has a focus of supporting community and supporting local. And so when we had this idea to make a beer, Sean was totally on board. You were totally on board. But then we came back and we were like, hey, can we use some Kansas wheat? And so what was your thought process of actually being able to utilize the local Kansas wheat initially?
My biggest thought process is when it comes to brewing, I'm a anxiety-ridden stress freak that gets no sleep until it's in a bottle and somebody's enjoying it. I lose sleep over my beers. I have to go over my recipes again and again. I triple check everything. And so my concern was actually the sugar content that we were going to be creating from mashing in an unknown wheat source with variables that I was not familiar with in terms of how it would mill, what I needed to set my miller at to get a proper crush to provide get those sugars out of it. So there was a lot of, just a little hesitancy and unsure, but I've tasted it. It's really good. So we're good to go.
Okay, well, tell us two things. We acted pretty quickly because we were like, we've got the wheat, it's ready to go. I think my husband drove to Darrin's house. He picked it up like the next day, brought it to me in Hatton. I volunteered to go to the brewery, which I volunteer every time. I think it's important to do a lot of research and development on this topic. And so we brought it directly to you. And Darrin, you had some analysis of the wheat that you were providing and also the malting wheat. Can you give us a little context of, why you already had that analysis and if it was beneficial to this process?
Basically, yeah.
No, go ahead, Will.
I was just saying, it really was a numbers game. It was, what am I receiving in, and then how do I have to counter adjust what I have on hand from Breeze or Raw or a Malt Europe company in order to make the right style that we were looking for.
Yeah, the reason I did have it tested because, well, number one, I like beer, and I thought it would be fun to get somebody interested in brewing some. I mean, I didn't think that we could, maybe end up where we're at. This was never in my mind of that, but I just thought for some of my friends that do home breweries, or even, a local brewery here close to where I'm at, I thought it'd be kind of a fun little project to give them some wheat, see what they could do with it. So I sent it off. A friend of mine who had been in the malting business in the past had suggested Hartwick College in upstate New York. They do a lot of testing for craft brewers, like what Will does, as well as different specialty foods and stuff. So I sent a sample off to him, and I did 2 tests. The first test was for just grain quality, what's the plumpness, what's the protein content. I mean, all of that stuff. I don't even remember what all was in the report that came back to me. And then I tried malting some of it at home in my basement. My wife wasn't too thrilled about it, but we did it anyway. And I sent that off to get it tested there again, just for curiosity's sake, and to see what it would, how it would turn out or whatever. So learned a lot from that process, but I really did it just for fun. So it's kind of weird. I love growing wheat and I love drinking beer, but I have no desire to be a brewer. I want to rely. Yeah, it's not for everybody. I don't know how it's an art, it really is an art for like what you were describing, Will, as far as, balancing out this and hell, I don't know what all you guys do. I sure do like your product, but I've got no desire to dive into that. So, but I just wanted to make it easy as I could for whoever would be playing around with this to see if we could make a good wheat beer, because I like wheat beer. So.
Yeah, so Darrin provided a 50-pound bag of turkey red heirloom wheat, which he grew in his regenerative farming system. And then Darrin, what was it? It was malted wheat. Correct me on what was the second thing you sent?
Yeah, I sent along a little, and I don't know, Will, whether you were able to use it or not, but I sent along a little bit of the malted wheat that I malted in my basement. And
yeah, we used both. We used all of it. Everything.
Oh, okay.
Everything
wow.
you sent me went in that batch. Yep.
Oh, okay. Awesome. No, that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. Everything you gave me, every grain of it is gone.
Okay. Oh, that's so fantastic. So, Will, you kind of already answered this beforehand, but did you notice anything different with this wheat, or was there any different flavor profile using the turkey red?
There was. I think the coloration was a big one. It was lighter than I expected it to be. What I expected was more traditional, like almost that neon orange you get from a traditional Blue Moon or Shock Top. This one is far lighter, almost a grapefruit kind of a color, and that was definitely part of it. But more than anything, Sean was concerned about getting a stuck mash, and I said, I'll just do it a little slower and steadier and use slightly more hot water, but keep our temperature variables right. And it was actually smoother than some of the 2 feet wheats I brewed. So I don't know, it must have been a good day, or it just worked out well that day, but it was awesome. So
that's awesome. We'll call it the regenerative wheat. Yeah, because Sean Willcott was telling me when we were in early stages of trying to figure out what kind of beer we wanted. I'm not a beer connoisseur type person, people. I'll leave it at that. But Sean was talking about it's really important to, when you're brewing a beer, to be able to have like a similar taste profile in craft beer tasting. And so he had initially told us that it was going to have a taste profile to like a Blue Moon with the coriander and the orange peel. And so in early stage talks with Sean, Aaron is the one that said, Sean, we've got this regenerative farming focus. Would you be willing to try to find some key ingredients for the process that included regenerative products? And Sean was brand new to the concept of regenerative, and he actually, within 24 hours, had gone so far down the rabbit hole of learning about regenerative practices that he was like, man, this is awesome. This is so great. We need to try and do it. So this is where the obstacles come in. So Will, what did we find when Sean tried to see what other products that could be either organic or regenerative or have that environmental focus on production?
In Kansas, it's really hard to find regenerative orange orchards, and
Yeah.
so that was an issue. We use Kansas hops in every beer we brew. That includes any small batches I make for our upcoming tap room, any trial beers that I make for experimentation, and even any stuff like this where we're doing a specialty beer for a great cause. We will always use Kansas and local products. If for some reason, if in the future, it would be great if we were able to expand to another place. If we're in, Mobile, Alabama, we will use Mobile, Alabama products. We really want to stay local and emphasize that community structure around us. But we do use Kansas hops in this one. We use Triple Pearl, which was a little different than most Belgian wit beers. But I wanted to use, again, Porter Valley hops and emphasize something local. So it's a little bit of a trial and error. But again, I tasted it last night. I'm very happy with it, and I can't wait for everybody else to taste it.
So Aaron, we're going to loop you in. We're going to task you with being a taster as well.
Just tried before I hopped on here, and Will said, no, we can't. It's carbonating right now.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm sorry. I had to like, I told you I was an anxiety riddled freak about it. I want it to just, he needs 24 more hours. 24 more hours.
I was just a little nervous, this event's coming up, and here we have a beer that has not been tried yet. Well, you've tried it right after it came out, but yeah. You're just a little nervous from advertising free beer with the ticket. And you're like, well, we hope it tastes good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I promise.
But that's I do
fantastic.
Know, Jessica, back to your comment about regeneratively grown products. Sean called me that night after he started searching about regenerative farming because he wasn't familiar with that term. And he reached out to some of his malters out west. And he's like, it's not there. He goes, the product, that regeneratively grown product is not there. And I think he had to do some education too from his own research to the folks that he was talking to. So.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, with GPR's focus on new market development, we've spent a lot of time working on feasibility studies on doing some specialty grain milling, some specialty baking, some CPG offerings. And we were at a meeting with Darrin was there, and Gail and a whole bunch of others that are on our committee. And we were eating some of our regeneratively produced flour at a pizza shop. And somebody in the back of the room shouted out, what about beer? Have we thought about beer? And the answer is, at that point, no, we hadn't thought about beer. But Darrin, after having that conversation and then thinking about this event and putting into motion the production of a GPR beer, we had to go out and do some more market research on the feasibility of beer. So can you talk a little bit about some of our findings and what the market cues are telling us right now for regenerative beer ingredients?
Yeah, I think to me, this kind of goes to a bigger picture of the supply chain, right? And so what Will has highlighted and what Aaron reinforced is the fact that we've got a lot of work to do in the supply chain when it comes to regeneratively grown products. It's just not there yet. I think, and somebody else can chime in, I think that the demand is there. I think that it's going to take some education. I think educating the consumer is key, just like what Steve went through on educating himself about regen. You know, that Kiss the Ground movie, I think he watched that and he really got excited about the potential and the possibilities here. I think that we have to work on educating the consumer. If the consumer demands it, I think that the supply chain will catch up then with it, because you're right. It's not there. I know in the past I've searched for regeneratively grown barley and just haven't found any there yet. So to me, this is a bigger issue about building the supply chain along with the education all at the same time to create the demand for it. If we can do that, that will move the bar, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think too, having that consumer focus is something that we thought about and we took a look at it. So Will, tell me a little bit about the different places you guys have to go to get products. What is there anything else local? You said that use Kansas hops. What else are you able to incorporate into your formulations? And I'll just preface this with one concern that Sean had, which was incredibly valid, was that we can't call this a regenerative beer, right? And there's a lot of food companies, there's people out there that are calling things regenerative. And my observation right now is that no one product is actually regenerative. It's the system in which they were grown in. And because this is a natural system, it could really change season to season. So Will, what are your thoughts about, sourcing and what else can you do local besides the Kansas hops?
I definitely want to be using some local herbs and some springtime beers for the tap room whenever that, obviously it'll be in a little while, but probably next spring we'll be using some local sage, local basil stuff that, as far as I even want to have a beer called the 21702 ale, which is my address, and use stuff from my garden. I would love to use some of the boysenberries we get for a boysenberry blonde. I'd love to use some of the crab apples that are on our property and just kind of do like an apple ale, but that'll be like a smaller batch kind of thing and make a really strong imperial apple ale that kind of knocks people on their socks, but it's a one-time thing because it's made from my farm, from my 2 trees. Obviously with stuff like that, you do get into, it's not going to have the same taste profile. Commercially, I got to think about how do I bottle that. The ABV might be slightly different. There's a legal standpoint from that. But in terms of being local centric and having a tap house and putting stuff right near us and right even on our property, like truly, plant to palate.
You know what? I don't think that that's a bad thing, and especially these one-offs and seasonal. In my opinion, we need to get back to this seasonality and going with what nature provides for us at the time. My question to you, Will, would be more along the lines of what about the base? In other words, the barleys that go into this, because barley is really the base for the beer. What about that? Is there much of a supply chain out there? What do we need to be doing as growers? In all transparency, I grew 25 acres of regeneratively grown 2-row malting barley that I harvested this spring. It's resting right now to give it 90 days before I send it off and get it tested. But is there any regenerative barley for the base of like most of your beers?
So the base is going to be a pale malt, or like you said, a barley, a 2-row barley, and we have, to the best of my knowledge, have not found that to be readily available or steadily available. We're using primarily the big malting companies. I would love for us to, again, get away from that and get something in the market that is truly sustainable and incredibly local and community centric, while also, having enormous environmental benefits. I personally, in terms of what I love what you were saying about, I love seasonality issues. Personally, I'm Wiccan. That's a big part of my religion is, the seasons and the Sabbats. And in terms of what we can do, I think we can utilize a lot more aspects. It'll just be on, again, a very small scale sort of thing until we have more readily available sourcing.
But that's okay.
I like
right?
that
Yeah.
idea.
It's
I
fine with
to-
me.
So to me, okay, so if you think of, this is a really bad example. I love the idea of having different flavor profiles, especially as they relate to nature and as they relate to the seasons, because I think that our palates understand what it is that we need in different times of the year. So I think this is fantastic. For example, like the food industry, fast food, think of Applebee's. Any Applebee's you go from East Coast to West Coast, anywhere around the world, the tequila lime chicken is exactly the same. As a consumer, I might be a little different. I don't desire that. I want to understand a local flavor. I want to understand what the people of Kansas, what their taste buds are attuned to, et cetera. So, I mean, there was a couple other people that were putting in the chat. Gail even said the environment and the year will never be replicated, so neither should the flavor. So no, I absolutely love that idea. And would you consider that a huge shift in brewing today? Is that what we're seeing as kind of a change with these small craft breweries?
I don't know that I'm not knowledgeable to speak about all of, craft brewing in America. I will say that the pandemic changed a lot of things. Obviously, there was more of an emphasis on bottling and replicating your flavors. There was also less outrageous styles and kind of more toning down into let's get back to basics. That I've noticed that in the last year, which I'm fine with. Some of my favorite beers are, if I go to any brewery, I always try their amber. I always try their ESB. I want to know if they can do that right, then we'll move on. But that should be a pretty good baseline. But I would love, I personally, if I had my way, we'd absolutely be doing very specialty small batch beers. And in terms of, aside from our 4 flagships, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, except that maybe we make something that's really great and I want to replicate it again and again and again, and I can't.
Yeah, that makes sense. So tell us about your 4 flagship beers and where people can buy your product.
Sure. So we have a family pack, which is both of our IPAs. It's the 4 brothers and 4 sisters. Sean comes from a family of 8. So he kept the family together, and we have 4 sisters double IPA that packs a punch at 8% ABV. Very hoppy, very full bodied. The 4 brothers, a little bit more mellow, kind of an amber tone to it, mild citrus characteristics. That's at 6%. And you get those 2 together in a 6-pack, which is a lot of fun. And those are available in pretty much, we got Topeka, Holton, Lawrence is very, very, very soon. And I'm very excited for it because that's where my alma mater resides. And then we also have a Texacan Stout, which is our sweet stout. That's a recipe that I've worked on for a really long time. And a lot of people that don't like stouts tell me that they enjoy it. So that's really great to hear. I make it with local, or not local. I want to use local at some point, but I use organic maple syrup in that one to achieve sweetness without the use of any honey or any other animal products. And then our 2 feet wheat, which is a very standard American wheat, clocks in at like 4.8%, just easy drinking, kind of a summer beer. We made a few other specialty ones, and we're obviously making the Farmer's Eve wheat beer coming up soon. And as far as I know, that's available in Lawrence. It will only be in Lawrence, but I'll let you tell the people more about that one.
Yeah, that's my best knowledge too, Aaron, is that this beer is going to be hitting the Lawrence market. I don't know much about how this works. I guess the state of Kansas still has some funky laws on how alcohol products can be placed. And so this is going to be great. We've produced the Farmer Eve beer for Great Plains Regeneration. And Farmer Eve it's a prototype concept, and if you guys open up the PDF that I sent, I think I had an image of it on there. But Farmer Eve is just really thinking about, like what Darrin talked about our ancestors coming over and bringing a piece of their heritage into Kansas. Kansas has a lot of different aspects to it that are to be celebrated, and the production of wheat is one of them. So Farmer Eve is thinking about getting back to the basics. Farmer Eve is thinking about how do we look at the foods that we put in our body, in our soil, in our seed? How do we do that and enhance that for the health of everybody? So we're really excited for this prototype. And I think there's going to be more that come from this project because we have just gained so much information of what's possible that we are super excited about it. So guys, I feel like, well, I could pick your brain a lot. Aaron and I visited the brewery. We've been there a couple times, just trying to get a piece of it. And Sean gave me some samples of the 2 feet wheat. It was absolutely my favorite. I put it out when I had some neighbors over and everybody really enjoyed it. So I think what you guys are doing is fantastic, and your community outreach through the lens of a brewery, I think is fantastic too.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I think it's very kind.
Right on. Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, Jessica, back to the Lawrence release. I think, Sean, can you just run a timeline on when you think that might hit the shelves? Because we're getting a lot of people asking, hey, when can we pick this up in Lawrence?
Basically, like, it really is just a matter of my labels coming in. As soon as the labels are in and they're slapped on bottles, I'm good to go. So I'm just on a hold up with, it's like I said before when I saw you earlier, shipping companies have been causing a lot of headaches. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast right now. But I'm really optimistic that it will be, let's see, it's the 6th today. I'm really, really hoping that if I can get it in the 11th, 12th, something like that, so that we have like a 9-day window before the event, that would be wonderful. That's my goal. That's what I'm shooting for. I hope that everything else works out to make it happen.
I hope you don't sell it all before the event.
Well, you're lucky. We're having a couple kegs produced. Will and Sean, and I believe their families are going to be on hand to help. We'll have a ceremony to tap the first keg. I'm sure Aaron will be first in line to help us out with that research and development. And it might take a couple samples to really get that full palette. I have no idea what I'm talking about, guys. Seriously, like, I'm not a beer connoisseur. So who has questions? The chat's been blowing up here. Let me see what we can pull. Guys, if you'd like to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, let's transition into open dialogue here. That's why we have these Farmer Friday conversations, so that we have a little bit. Oh, Rob asked, this is a very important question about logistics. Will there be one keg at each table? Oh, no, wait, I thought you said, will there be one keg at each table? Okay, will there be a keg? Will there be a keg at the silent auction table? I never thought of that. Can we auction off a keg, Aaron?
I know we were going to go get some 6-packs, but
All
that would limit our
right.
stock on availability to give out to the other attendees. So
Well,
there will definitely be
probably a great price. Yeah, exactly.
We're definitely shooting for the 6-packs on the silent auction table.
I think we'll do that. So Rob, thank you so much for your support. Rob is with a fantastic company who is really helping us out promote the event. So thanks for all you do, Rob.
You're welcome.
Who else has a question? Deanna, is that your hand raised? No, she said no.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for Deanna. Have you ever you raise a lot of ancient grains up in North Dakota? Have you taken any of those to breweries? Any beer?
Well, this is actually our first year of raising ancient grains. And when I reached out to some of the local breweries, they were specific in saying there was a specific malting barley that they were looking for. And I don't know anything about brewing beer, so I had no idea what I was even asking about. But I have reached out to a few, but I think I'll pursue it a little more with, we have some Egyptian hulless barley, and it's a 2-row barley. So I think it's worth a shot.
Yeah, I like the conversation we were having earlier on the seasonality of things. I think that when we talk about regeneratively grown and doing what's right by the soil and the water cycle and all that goes along with that, is the seasonality of a way of eating or drinking for that matter. What came to my mind when we were talking about earlier is that wine has different years will be different, you know, and they specify, well, this was from 19, you know, or from 2012. It was a good wine year, and 2013 may have been, you know, kind of an average year. I think it'd be really cool to have that seasonality or the year differences in beers as well. I don't know whether that's possible, Will, but that's just the first thing that was coming to my mind when you guys were discussing that. Is that possible, Will?
So you could do some different style, like vintages and stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, that's getting into a whole different type of brewing and keeping and oxidation and levels that I don't know. That's definitely, I'm far from a mathematician, but it would be cool to experiment with. I mean, I'm all about trial and error. That's how I know how to do everything in my life. So
Yeah. So what you're really saying is, here, let's all drink it as fast as you make it, right?
I mean, you really need to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You really.
Yeah, we should do it for the movement, the soil
Yes.
movement. Drink more beer. So I don't know if he's on the line, but Gail Fuller with Fuller Field School, that's one thing that he emphasizes through farmer-led education and outreach. He operates a field school twice a year. This is the 10th anniversary of it. And Gail puts an emphasis on seasonal foods. And he also hosts a lot of farm dinners throughout, you know, and he's even had dinners where people come out and forage for things that are ripe at that moment, and then have folks, you know, chefs on hand that cook with it. So Gail, you probably align with this idea of seasonal eating.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, what a great conversation today, guys. I really enjoyed it. And I think, Jess, you made the comment about Applebee's, and, you know, I'm with you. I just, you know, I want to taste the community that I'm in when I'm there. And our June dinner, we had a chef on farm from Kansas City, Howard Hanna, that is the #1 chef in Kansas City. And we had a Southern Hemisphere dinner, and we had African dishes, we had Palestinian dishes, all kinds of dishes, but they were all true to Kansas too. And he even explained, he goes, this dish would have been served in Africa for this reason, but I didn't have this ingredient, so we used this ingredient off the farm and we changed it, you know, blah, blah, blah. And really, you know, I like that kind of thing. And for me, really good wine, like Darrin said, it's going to taste different year to year. And I think the craft beers will do the same thing in these small batches if they're sourcing the grain from one farm. The flavor of Darrin's wheat is going to be different next year, slightly. It may not be a huge difference, but there's going to be slight differences year to year. And I think that's perfectly good. And I understand what Will says about wanting to replicate something that's really, really good. I've got a friend that makes some of the best port you will ever have, but each batch is slightly different. But, you know, no better, no worse, just slightly different.
It's kind of the fun of it too, though. I mean, I'm complaining about it, but it's kind of the fun of it too.
Absolutely. I love this focus. David, you have your hand raised. Feel free to ask your question.
So, a quick question. I'm sorry if I missed it, because I was handling a baby here, so I might have missed this. But you guys are talking about how this is a seasonal beer, it's regenerative, and I think those are some really cool elements that the consumer of the beer would maybe benefit from learning about. Are you guys creating any messaging around it, a special label? Is there going to be anything at the bar where people get this, where they can hear that story and see so they understand what they're drinking? Because I think that's such a cool story.
Absolutely.
I'll let Jessica take that, because I think you guys designed the actual label with the QR code on it, as well as the website address and other links, so that anybody who buys a 6-pack, luckily, will be able to see, as far as I remember. And I don't know what else you guys are doing at the event, Jessica.
Absolutely. That is a part of our focus. And we will be launching this, our event, our relationship with KAWS, but at the same time, the beer is going to go into the market. And it's considered a one-off prototype that we were just very fortunate that Willcott Brewery was able to sponsor and allow us to do. But yes, we do have a QR code on the packaging, and we have our Farmer Eve mentality printed on there. And if you give me a second, I'll go ahead and pull it off and stick it in the chat. I can also email it afterwards, because we do have, it's sort of like a manifesto that we believe in soil health, and we believe that healthy soil creates healthy plants, people, and planet, and that by supporting the farmers who are making these transitional practices through the lens of regenerative agriculture, that we're going to be able to help promote not only the soil health, but the economic focus and the community focus that we desire with GPR. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's going to be storytelling with it. And I think this process made us realize that, first of all, we're very careful not to call it a regenerative beer. It's a partially regenerative beer, or it's sourced partially with regenerative ingredients, because it doesn't exist. We're creating something right now that doesn't exist. We're trying to put it out there as a prototype so that other people, maybe even our group, can maybe fulfill this idea. Darrin, talk a little bit about the agronomic obstacles that we are facing as we look at a feasibility on doing a beer project on a large scale. And while you're doing that, I'll look for our Eve label.
Okay. First off, though, I want to go back to part of this discussion about how not the infrastructure, but the supply chain doesn't exist. I really appreciate David's question, and the reason is because, you know, that's part of the education, right? I mean, creating a demand for this is along with the storytelling, would just help improve the soil health and the communities of more and more people. Once they see the demand and hear the story behind this beer, at least that's my hope, is that they can say, hey, we need to get behind this. We need to be looking for something that is truly regenerative, and something we need to get to know the farmers that's growing our food. And, you know, they want this healthy, good type of product. They want healthy soils and a healthy environment, and they want to be healthy themselves. And so I don't want to raise something that is not going to fulfill that. I don't want to sell into a commodity market that breaks down whatever I'm raising into a zillion different little pieces and it's transformed into something else that's supposedly food. I want them to be able to consume and the goodness of what great grandma had when she was baking bread, or they were Mennonites, so they didn't drink a lot of beer, but they got to eat the goodness of the grain. So anyway, I really appreciate your question, David. I think that's paramount, and something that we need to keep in mind when we're all together in Lawrence is talking to the consumer and telling the story about why we're doing what we're doing. I think is extremely important to be able to regenerate more acres than just my little field.
Can I say just one more thing, Jessica? You pointed out several times that it's not completely regenerative, but what I've found talking to people about regen ag and whether there's a regenerative supply chain is when you do get into that nuance, they appreciate that. They need to understand that, you know, it's in process. We haven't worked out all the kinks. We're trying to expand the entire supply chain to be regenerative. And I think with that nuance, maybe they can even start to think about all the little pieces of the supply chain that they can support and ask their brewer to try to source more materials locally and regeneratively. It's so cool. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so I shared on the screen, David, you're exactly right. And I would say that we all got cold feet really early on, and we thought, oh no, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe we shouldn't use the word regenerative at all. I mean, we had some pretty really amazing conversations with this group of determining what should we do, what shouldn't we do, because we are deeply aware of greenwashing, whitewashing, whatever the case might be. And so that's why we wanted to handle this project with integrity and transparency of saying, this is what we are able to produce right now. We have goals. Our goals are to help support and scale regenerative agriculture so that more products like this can be created. So here's the label that's actually going out. It's, reclaiming the goodness of grain. We've got a little bit there about the practices, and then the QR code is going to link to our website, and then from there that'll get linked back over to the Great Plains Regeneration Oh, there's our t-shirts. Side note, we have merchandise now through GPR. But I didn't find, we had like a 4-part manifesto of the things that Farmer Eve believes in, and I can't find that right now. Give me a second here. I'll keep looking, or I can just email it out to everybody.
So I've got a really dumb question for Will. What you would think I know this as much as I like beer. What is the difference between wheat beer and wit beer?
Typically the yeast used in a Belgian, and then also the addition of typically some other ingredients like the orange peel and the coriander that you typically find in them. You can also do lemon peel and other kinds of, there's also usually a lot of Belgians are open fermented. I didn't do that this time because I wanted to make sure to have control over this particular beer, seeing as it was a one-off. And then there's a few other discrepancies in terms of the actual beer stylings, according to what it says in the American Beer Journal Institute and everything for the stylings. There's not that much difference in terms of carbonation, haziness, and ingredients, of course. So.
Okay, thanks for that. See, you're educating me already. This is cool. Jess, are you still looking for
I found it. Here it is. Okay, I found it. This was kind of our, manifesto here that we're putting. So what I showed you guys was the 6-pack carrier, and then we've also got the case box, which actually we're able to put more information on that. So here's kind of our manifesto that we're putting out for this prototype. We are going to reclaim the goodness of grain. Our soil health journey begins with the soil and regenerative farming. We're going to hearken back to heritage grains our grandmothers enjoyed. We're going to support farmer co-ops like Farmer Eve, which is our prototype project, and that soil health practices increase farm profitability. And ultimately, healthy soil equals healthy plants, healthy people, and a healthy climate. So yeah, great question, David. That is alongside this project, we also want to be introducing a lot of the concepts of regenerative agriculture and think about how we can have regenerative food system. But it all comes back to community, and that's why we're throwing the party. That's why Aaron and myself and Libby, I apologize. Libby is also the assistant director of KAWS. She's on here as well. She's our background Zoom ninja that helps us out. But that's what we're doing. And it's August 21st in Lawrence, Kansas. It is a very, very large venue. It's a concert venue, and we do have limited tickets that are available due to COVID, but there's indoor spacing, outdoor spacing. There's going to be a lot of circulation. And so for right now, we're really excited for the party. Aaron, is there anything I forgot to mention about the event other than you should buy your tickets to attend?
I don't think so. I think one of the things Darrin said earlier spawned a thought, and I know we've talked about it many times, Jessica and Libby, on our calls, and having this mix of non-producers, the end user at the event, and having that networking and finding out what their interests are. I think there's going to be some neat conversations that come from this event. To me, it's like a soil health workshop or a field day, and you typically get a lot of agency folks, a lot of producers at these workshops, but do you typically get an end user at the event? And this is going to bring some of those end users and have some really neat conversations.
I think so. I love the civic engagement that we're creating. And, like I mentioned, Rob Harrington has gone to bat for us. He's introduced us to close to a dozen people that are outside of the farming community to give them a ticket to come to the event so that they can start to build a base of knowledge. And then hopefully the idea is to have what happened with Sean Willcott, the brewer, when Aaron came up to him and said, hey, we have this great idea. Could you use this regeneratively grown wheat that Darrin Unruh has? And that kickstarted this down the rabbit hole self-education on what is regenerative. What does that even mean?
So I've got, Aaron, I got a question for you. Could you tell us all just a little bit more about KAWS and some of your projects and stuff? I know this is a joint fundraiser, and I think it's great what you guys are doing, and needs to be more of this. Could you tell us a little bit more about KAWS and maybe some of your projects and stuff?
Yeah, sure. So KAWS we really partner a lot with state agencies, federal agencies, nonprofits. We're collaborative partners to help get projects on the ground. One of our flagships is the RAPS projects, the Watershed Restoration and Protection Strategies through KDHE. So KAWS, we sponsor, I believe, 6 different watersheds. We have 2 full-time RAPS coordinators, watershed coordinators, and 3 part-time coordinators that work with priority areas within their established watersheds based off of the different impairments that have been identified. And each one of those have a set of best management practices that they work with landowners on, whether it's bacteria in the streams or sedimentation. There's quite a list. So that's one segment of KAWS. And we also have boots on the ground in one of our joint partnerships with a private company and with an estate agency to actually implement soil health practices. And that's in one particular watershed. That's the John Redmond watershed. He's called our John Redmond watershed technician. And we're in the process now of purchasing equipment, tractors, no-till drill. They'll be running the Hagee interseeder. And so we're KAWS is going to own equipment and hopefully overcome some of those barriers for producers on getting cover crops in the ground at certain times of the year. We have a river coordinator on the Ark River, a river access coordinator. I'm working with the communities to bring folks to the rivers. We have a project right now on the Kansas River that causes co-hosting, a co-partner with Juniper Environmental, and looking at the feasibility on acoustical deterrents for big-headed carps or aquatic nuisance species that are also in these waterways. And it's not just issues with overtaking populations of native fishes, but what do aquatic nuisance species do to water treatment plants? These reservoirs that have zebra mussels, for example. So the aquatic nuisance species are a huge issue. And everybody at Avon Jakes will get to see this project, the location, because we're going to be sitting there looking. If you've never been there, it's sitting on the south bank of the Kansas River. The deck on the north door walks out and you're right there. So we'll see the dam, and where hopefully, depending on how this feasibility study comes out, there will be acoustical speaker set up as a deterrent down the road. So that's some of the projects, but we host and coordinate with a variety of nonprofits to host things like the Playa Lakes Workshop, the Kansas Natural Resources Conference. Those are a few of the things that we work on.
Yeah, and speaking of, there was actually a project that was supposed to be developed by our event date, a project on the Kansas River that was going to kind of complete this walkway and this area for people to be able to enjoy. But as a lot of you know, because of COVID, that project didn't get finished. And so we were actually we have this concert venue and the Kansas River, and we'll have like the sun fading into a beautiful sunset. And we wanted to have like soil health demos going on and some musical buskers and doing some other really cool food stuff. But because of the world that we live in, the construction wasn't able to get finished. And so we're gonna, but still the event's gonna be amazing, inside, outside. So everything like that. Was there any other questions? We're kind of at the top of the hour right now. Frank, I think you had a question, and tell us where you're calling in from, Frank.
Well, I'm on the east coast of, I'm here, yeah. I'm on the east coast of Australia. It's 4 a.m. and it's -3 C outside. And that's why you can see the fire in the background. Okay, so from a marketing point of view, on small scale, I'd be looking at the ancient grains and brewed in the ways of old. Right? And I'll give you an example from our farm from this year. For the first time, we produced a line of lambs for the Islamic festival of Eid, which is one of the biggest things in there. And so these lambs were raised on grass. They were never vaccinated. They were never drenched. They were never vac-lined. And they were virtually replicas of the lamb that these people that from Egypt and the Middle East experienced from back home. And the response that I got was amazing. They said, we'd like them a little bit bigger, but the taste was brilliant. So, it's harking back to the old times. To me, from a marketing point of view, is really important. And I think that's, because you're never going to provide beer for the whole of America. But if you can find this little niche, you can put a premium on it and people will buy it and come back and buy it again. I don't know how everybody feels about
No,
that sort of marketing concept.
I think it's fantastic. And, we even use that word of hearkening back to what our grandmothers understood, back to this journey of heritage grains. There's what's really interesting, and like Darrin and Aaron might have a good perspective. I one time did a book club. I was like a guest speaker for a book club, and we did the Kiss the Ground book, and we ordered like 30 copies of it, and like 20 of them got checked out, and I didn't know who checked them out. And then when we actually held the book club discussion, it was a group of older ladies that were probably in their upper 60s or 70s. And so when the book starts talking about regenerative practices, increasing biodiversity, having a robust crop, crop rotation with a lot of different crops at once, these little ladies said, "Oh, that's called farming. That's how we farmed. We farmed with certain methods because we understood nature and we understood how to walk our circles or our fields and be able to understand what the pests were telling us, what the weeds were telling us, et cetera." So hearkening back, I think, is definitely a goal, not only in the marketing strategy, but it's also an agronomic strategy.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I really like your example, Frank. I think that's something. I like your thoughts on the marketing end of this, as well as, harken back to the way, great grandma did it. I don't know. I like history, so maybe I'm biased.
Well, we're thankful to you. Do you have any information about this week coming over, Darrin, that you can share, and I'll email it out to the group?
What do you mean?
Just in particular about how it came from your, your Ukrainian.
Well, yeah. So my ancestors were part of the migration of Mennonites from the Ukraine back in the 1870s. There was a lot of trouble. This is pre-Bolshevik Revolution, but there was a lot of trouble over there, and they were looking to new lands. And anyway, ended up. Long story short, ended up here in Kansas. Some of them got scattered all over the Western Hemisphere, but from South America all the way up to Canada. And this was the wheat that they brought with them from the Ukraine. It's different. It gets twice as tall, or I don't know, maybe not twice as tall, but a lot taller than the regular modern varieties of wheat. It won't yield as much. I've been experiencing it yields about half of what the modern varieties did. I think it's more resilient and more robust. Deanna had it in the chat earlier about how some of these ancient grains are surviving the D4 drought up in North Dakota right now. I think it's tougher, it's more resilient. It's just a little bit different. I'm not raising this to haul to the elevator. I don't want it to go into a commodity system. I want it to go to make beer and bread. And, So working as hard as I can. I did raise, instead of, I told you 3 acres the first year. I expanded that to 25 acres last year. That's harvested, sitting at the seed cleaner, waiting to get cleaned. I've got a lot of interest. A lot of people are wanting to buy some of it for seed wheat. And I, can't wait to continue to expand on this. Deanna's got her hand in the air.
Absolutely. Absolutely, guys. All right. Well, do we have any more questions for our panelists? If not, I just want to thank Kansas Alliance for Wetlands and Streams for believing in Great Plains Regeneration, for bringing us on board as a partner, and by suggesting having a party. And then connecting us with Will Heinen with Willcott Brewing, Sean Willcott, to say, hey, we've got this idea of brewing a beer, which then pinged our thought of, hey, we know a guy who has the wheat, and that guy's Darrin. So that's kind of how we got here. But any final thoughts, Will, about the event and about the beer?
I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing all of you guys, and it's going to be a little bit nostalgic for me because my band played at Abe and Jake's like 18 years ago. So yeah, so it's going to be a little weird. I'm sure it's changed significantly in the almost 2 decades, which is embarrassing to admit. I won't be telling anybody at the event that, but
well, you've already told us. This is live. What was the name of your band? What was your band? Maybe I saw them.
That one was called Aeolian, like the music mode.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then there was another band that was a lot less PC name that I don't think would fly anymore, so I'm not going to say
Perfect.
it.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Okay, this is a side note, and was Chuck Mead the singer for that band that is not so PC?
No,
Oh, okay.
Were you in it, Darrin?
No, heavens no. What do they say? You can't carry a tune in a bucket? That would be me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we know who not to ask to
Yes.
sing at the event, but we also, I've got a plan B lined up in case our singer-songwriter isn't able to make it. Will.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, and if you guys want to have bleeding ears, I'll be on it.
Okay. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, I'm going to stop the recording. As if you've ever been on a GPR call, you can stick around for a few more minutes and get the real scoop. But for right now, thank you for joining the GPR Farmer Friday webinar and signing off for the day.
Bye.